Hello, good evening. I'd like to call to order the Butte-Silver Council of Commissioners Committee of the Whole meeting for Wednesday, October 11th. Clerk, can we have a roll call?
11 present, 1 presiding.
Commissioner Sorich, would you lead us in the prayer and the pledge?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners. Almighty God, we implore you, look upon us and guide us this night as we make decisions which shall greatly affect our community of Butte-Silver. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we please you and best serve our fellow citizens. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I will ask for public comment on any items on the agenda, and we do have one that needs to be read into the record after, so make sure I don't forget. Clerk, thank you. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Evan Barrett. I live at 807 West Silver here in Butte. I am retired now. I happen to be on the core group for Restore Our Creek Coalition and also on the board of CTEC. Most recently, I've kind of enjoyed being referred to as a Superfund watchdog. And I'm speaking here, however, as an individual in support of Resolution 436. Now, you might expect me to talk to you about the Montana Constitution and openness under the Constitution and the rights to a clean and healthful environment under our Constitution. But I want to go back a little further, several millennium, several thousand years earlier to ancient Greece. You know, we are democracy here, our government here in this country, and democracy started in Greece. Democracy actually is a Greek word, and if you break it down, the word demos, D-E-M-O-S, is the core to democracy. And the word demos means the people. Democracy is about the people. It only works when the people are empowered. And to be empowered, the people have to know what's going on. Resolution 436, and without knowing what's going on, they can't become a force for good for you, because nothing is more important than for you to hear the voice of the people and for you to understand what common sense things they want to see you do on their behalf. Resolution 436 speaks to core values such as openness and transparency, and also to clean being better than dirty or better than half dirty. When you consider this resolution, don't be sidetracked by things like, who wrote this resolution? Think about what's in it. Or is it offending anybody? It's meant to serve the people and set policy for this local government when it comes to this important thing of Superfund cleanup. Remember the core of what this resolution calls for: openness and transparency, and clean is better than for Butte than dirty or half dirty. If you need to tweak a word or two to pass it, go ahead and do that. But pass the resolution as policy for Butte-Silver. Don't ever let it be said that when the local government of Butte confronted the core issues of openness, transparency, and clean being good for the city, that somehow Butte voted against those things. I don't think that's what the people think ought to be done. I don't think that's what you think ought to be done. So I urge you to vote on those values and find a way to pass this resolution. I want to apologize. I have to be at an airport down the road to pick up my brother-in-law who's coming back from Europe, and I'm the only guy that can do it, so I can't stay for your debate, but I urge you to follow those premises and pass the resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Elton Ringsock, and I live at 3310 Hannibal. And I'd like here to comment in support of Resolution 2023-436. As Evan just said, transparency, openness are absolutely important, and going forward, clean is better. And we're talking now about the future of this community and the next generation. You know, Evan's 78 and I'm 80, and if you pass this resolution and things finally get done and a shovel is finally turned, and I hope one is turned before one is turned for my grave at the rate they're going, but when one is turned, it wants to be for the right reasons. So there's been a question for a long time on who's in charge of protecting the environment here. The EPA is the lead agency. It's really exasperating because the EPA has been negotiating with BP, and I think they've been negotiating for a lesser remedy. The consent decree was signed in 2020, and there are solutions that are known, and yet not a shovel has turned, because they're trying to implement a procedure and procedures that would harm this community behind a curtain of secrecy. So I've got a couple comments here from a guest editorial that was written in the Montana Standard in the past, and the title of it was, "Pay No Attention to That Man Behind the Curtain. Superfund Needs Transparency and Accountability." And these are the comments. During an August 2013 thunderstorm, the creek had dissolved copper levels 13 times higher than the federal acute standards. The diggings east and north side tailings mining waste must be completely removed, and the area must be used to build stormwater retention basins to the extent practicable. The public must demand upfront accountability from EPA. It is too important for long-term viability of this community to allow these decisions to be made in secret. Please, EPA, do your job. And the last one is, we need a protective remedy in Butte. Come out from behind that curtain. Joe Griffith, June 2nd, 2016. And that's the end of the quotes from that particular guest editorial. But both DEQ and EPA have to be more open with the people in this community. They have to be honest and they have to be upfront about the Superfund and what's going on if they want to regain the public trust. And what you're doing here tonight would greatly aid that and make it more likely to happen. Initially, the discussions were cloaked behind the gag order, a curtain of confidentiality and a consent decree negotiation that was requested by the EPA. The only reason Judge Hayden put a gag on the negotiations was because it was requested by EPA. That has all ended, and it's time we get the transparency we need to ensure this community has a proper cleanup, and thank you all for what you do.
Thank you, Mr. Ringsack.
My name is Don Patrice. I live at 2804 White Boulevard. I am just a concerned citizen and a grandfather of 3. Your job is to represent all of the people of Butte-Silver Bowl. Your job was also to make sure that some of you signed or voted for the consent decree. Some of you have had it thrust upon you of the office that you're in now. All we are asking is that you follow the letter of the law that is within the consent decree if you actually know what is in the consent decree. We are finding out a number of things that all of a sudden that what you guys have signed off on, it's the big surprise. And now you want us not to have transparency and openness of discussions going forward. I urge you to pass this resolution fully. You pledged allegiance tonight. You prayed tonight that you would make the right decision. I pray like hell you make the right decision. As I said, I'm a concerned citizen and a grandfather of 3. You know what you don't mess around with is a sow and her cub bears. You want to find out what you can find. If you mess around with grandparents, it's worse. I urge you to vote for this resolution. Do your job, do it correctly, and pass this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patrice.
My name is Bill McGregor. I live at 423 North Excelsior. I have been a member of CTEC since it was founded about 1990, and so I've been following all of these events for a few years. I'm also a member of the ROC board, and I come tonight starting with an apology Had I known that this resolution was out there, I would have brought something to you before, but I've been out of town for 3 weeks. So I would like to pass this around for your consideration as you begin your debate. Specifically, what this is my response to finally getting a look at this resolution online and getting a sense of what the gist was, but being confused. And so what I tried to do with this was make everything so clear that debate was kind of pro forma. It seems to me that the issue at hand is self-evident. And I really can't imagine, when put in these terms, who would oppose it. So I encourage you to look at the text that, the rewrites that I've done, and consider them as you're undertaking your debate, and use whatever you can, whatever you find helpful. And I hope you end up agreeing that this should be a slam dunk. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
My name is Bill Foley at 804 Zerelda Street. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I appreciate your time tonight. I'm speaking to encourage you to support Resolution 436. I have often been accused of being a Monday morning quarterback when I express my concerns about Superfund cleanup. I'm sure you guys have probably got that many times as well. The thing is, it's impossible to be a Monday morning quarterback when the game on Sunday was played in secrecy. And that's what we've been dealing with in Butte. Butte-Silver Bowl has been settling for the short end of the stick when it comes to Superfund's cleanup for the better part of 40 years. That isn't because the mining city's full of pushovers and Monday morning quarterbacks like me. To the contrary, it is filled with people who are strong with resolve. It is filled with people who will always fight to do what's right. The reason Butte has gotten the shaft is because the people negotiating for us on behalf of our citizens have been forced to do it in secrecy. It's bad enough when the citizens of Butte-Silver Bow have been left in the dark. It is absolutely shameful when those elected have also been kept out of the loop. That's not how government is supposed to work. And regrettably, this secrecy makes it hard for the people of Butte-Silver Bow to trust their leaders. We are missing out on your knowledge. We're missing out on your input. So I encourage you to vote for this resolution to remove this dark cloud of secrecy and bring us all back into the light. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Joe Griffin. I live at 1121 West Diamond. I'm here to speak against Resolution 436. As you guys remember, just recently I gave you a presentation on what I saw as what is in the record of decision. Let me back up one. There's a lot of talk about transparency, and I kind of find this particular resolution pretty hypocritical because I have no idea who was behind it. I was told there are legal minds, there are technical minds. I'm up here telling you I'm a technical person that has been involved in Butte, both the consent decree until I retired, and then after the consent decree as a citizen, I went to all of the public presentations, but right now some of this is questions. I want to go through point by point this resolution, not point by point, but ones I think are critical. And some of them are questions, and I guess I would ask you guys to consider those questions if you get into debate. First of all, the first part of the resolution talks about opposition to deviations from the commitments made to the public. I'm not sure I understand what those deviations are. I assume that it is the understanding of the people that wrote this, that those deviations have to do with the gray material. I would go back to the simple reading of the language in the record, in the consent decree that said those materials may be used. And it was fairly specific where they could be used. Gray material came up again, just asking for clarification. One of the things I would say here is, one of the questions I also ask is that independent scientific data demonstrated a need to remove contamination in Silverbow Creek corridor to protect ground and surface water, as noted by the state's position in its contingencies set forth in the 2020 record of decision amendments. In truth, there is a letter in the record of decision that DEQ said they agree with everything in the record of decision. Now, maybe that meant the consent decree, I don't know. But I guess that's what I'm asking. What are those contingencies? These are under the whereases still. Negotiators presented an agreement in principle to the public in 2018, yada, yada, yada. That agreement in principle was the first draft of the proposed plan. The proposed plan went out as a public document. It was well advertised. There were many meetings. The EPA recorded all of the public input. And if you want, there's 247 pages of their responsiveness summary, and you can see what all the responses were to public input. So let me move on to actually the numerated parts. Excuse me, I got to get my glasses out. Cleanup activities under consent decree and commitments to the public shall be driven by independently reviewed science and public input based on the concept that cleaner is better than waste in place. I would put it to you guys that that's not your decision. That was actually EPA's decision, and they use the science of both ARCO, their own contractors, and DEQ. I would run that question by EPA. It is under their authority. To protect the community, the use of urban roads shall be last resort and should only be used after consideration of other mechanisms such as rail, slurry pipe, or conveyor. And I think everybody kind of agrees on that, but at what point does that become overly burdensome to consider conveyors and such? And I would ask you, is this only being applied to material that's being moved under Superfund, or does this apply to Public Works? What happens when Public Works digs into some mine waste and they have to haul it up to the repository? I'd also say, does it work for RMAP cleanups? Does it work for BRIS and the work done on the caps? Number 3 kind of gets into, again, confidential negotiations. I need to remind you guys, there are no confidential negotiations. Those were done. The consent decree was signed. You can read all of what was in it, but there are no confidential negotiations. Is what's being referred to now as confidential negotiations are simply designs. And I would say what role does the public actually have? How many people out there want to go to these meetings and argue points of hydrogeology or points of engineering? I find this last part confusing. Butte-Silver Bow does not sanction any delegation of citizens' right under EPA's administrative record. The ROD doesn't infringe on anybody's rights. And I find it, again, I find that a little bit hypocritical, because then right below that we go to no employee or official of Butte-Silver Bow shall participate in any effort to discredit, harass, or humiliate a scientific, legal, or public policy question or position. Does that mean any Butte-Silver Bow employee waives their First Amendment rights? And the last one, I like this. Actually, all elected officials and employees of Butte-Silver Bow are reminded that the chief function of local government at all times is to serve the best interests the people of Butte. I think this is great. I would suggest you all pin this to or tape it to your mirror in the morning and read it every morning. It's good advice. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave Hutchins, 529 South Colorado Street, also speaking on the transparency resolution. I just want to make a few points that I haven't heard come up in these debates yet. So, I think because Butte-Silver Bow is in a unique position, you're a potentially responsible party. We are a potentially responsible party. A large portion of your budget comes directly from another PRP. And because you represent the citizens, the people most affected by these Superfund decisions, I think it's incumbent upon you to go out of your way to be transparent and open about all of these things. I think that's really important. As a PRP, there is a distinct possibility of conflict of interest, and it's important to avoid any perception. Some other things, an example of a deviation, as Joe was mentioning there, would be how we were presented with a plan that included RMAP and the biomonitoring, and that was not included in the CD. So there have been deviations. Every Butte-Silver Bow employee in this room has been nothing but professional and communicative with me, but there have been instances where county employees attacked researchers, myself included, led the charge on attack on researchers, shared, things from my private Facebook wall in their duties in an attack on research. This happened. It's all, you can look at the FOIA records. So I would encourage you to consider those things. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Mark Thompson. I'm Vice President of Environmental Affairs for Montana Resources, 600 Shields Avenue. And I'm also a member of the Executive Board of the Montana Mining Association. I'm here to speak to you in my role of the latter. And maybe changing the subject here a little bit, I'm speaking to Communication 503, which is a presentation by Mr. Vincent on U.S. Fish and Wildlife proposed Missouri Headwaters Conservation Area. This is a proposal by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to designate 5.7 million acres of southwest Montana as a conservation area. They state that the purpose of this is so that they can purchase up to 250,000 acres of conservation easements from private landowners. But when you look at the map of the designation, well over half of that area is ineligible for private conservation easements. Well, I certainly don't oppose private property owner's decision to accept money and have their deed encumbered with a conservation easement, I certainly have a problem with why was so much area designated in the conservation area that's ineligible. So it makes me kind of wonder what happens if it's ineligible but it's within the designated area. The other thing is a private property landowner who accepts this public money for conservation easement is not required to maintain public access through their property to public lands behind. Even if it exists right now, they still have the right to close it, even though they accepted the money. Designation could have some effect on BLM and Forest Service ability to manage public lands for timber harvests, wildfire control, and certainly for granting mineral leases on federal lands. Certainly, and as Mr. Vincent will go in a lot more detail, the purpose and process that the Fish and Wildlife Service are using for this is definitely unclear and lacks transparency. Likely has implications to active mining, future mining in southwest Montana, but I do want to disclose that Montana Resources is in the Clark Fork River drainage, so that area does not impact Montana Resources at all. So I wanted to make that clear. So I ask this council to learn more about the implications of this designation before taking a position. And if U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service does not become more transparent of the implications of what they're doing, I ask that you oppose the designation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brian Holland, 1600 West Steele here in Butte. I'm also here in regard to Mr. Vincent's upcoming presentation on the proposed conservation area. I'll be brief because I know you want to get on with your meeting. I'm an attorney here in Butte, but tonight I'm here just on my own behalf, not on behalf of any clients. My interest in this area is because I work in the area of mining projects, energy projects, environmental projects, natural resource projects. That's the world I work in. And my concern is that this proposed conservation area, I don't know what the potential impacts of it could be on various projects. Could be a mining project, could be a renewable energy project. For example, the generation intertie line that would have to run to a renewable energy project. I think there's just a lot more information needs to be understood how this designation could impact projects like that either, and it could be existing projects if someone's trying to expand their operations. So, Mr. Thompson, I thought had good comments, good questions and concerns. Please consider as many years of experience and expertise as you listen to Matt's presentation. As Mr. Thompson said, Matt's going to provide you with good information and some questions and concerns, and I ask that you consider all that as you determine Butte-Silver's position on the proposed conservation area. I think after listening to it at a minimum, you'll think that Butte-Silver needs to learn a lot more about this designation and the implications of it in Silver Bow County. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my name's Courtney Young. I'm a professor of metallurgical materials engineering at Montana Tech. I do not speak on behalf of Montana. I speak on behalf of myself. 1201 West Gold Street. I'm here to follow up with Brian's comments and comments that you're going to hear further. Number one, and Mark Thompson, please, too. Number one is to talk specifically about critical materials. There are 35 that have been designated in 2018. In 2021, some were taken off that list. There are now 50 total added to the list. Another 15 have been added. These critical materials come from somewhere. They're called mines. You take a Conservation Act and you take away the mines, and I'm quite frankly very disturbed. We just did the Pledge of Allegiance. There might not be a country to do a Pledge of Allegiance to. Critical materials are important for our economy and our military. If we don't have a military, we can't shoot down rockets that are targeting us or Israel. God bless them. And critical materials allow that to happen. Technology allows that to happen. I personally would like to continue pledging my allegiance to this country. I don't have much else to say, but I do want you to understand, trying to pull up the definition of critical materials here. Just so you know, critical materials are mineral commodities essential to the economic and national security of the United States for which the supply chain is vulnerable to disruption. The term critical minerals refers to elements and minerals that are predominantly imported from various countries, some of which may discontinue exports to the U.S. because of political disputes or restricted availability of supplies. If we don't have these, we could be in trouble. In fact, we will be in trouble. That area designated has several that I know that the Montana Bureau of Mines and Geology up at Montana Tech is mapping and trying to see if there's enough there that make it mineable. The Berkeley Pit, you've heard it here, that it contains rare earths. It's a small contribution, but it does contain rare earths that potentially could be extracted. Okay. These only come from one place. You mine it or you recycle it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, my name is Scott Laird. I'm the Montana Field Representative for the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership. We are a conservation organization that works on conservation policy and conservation funding across the United States. We have 4,000 members in the state of Montana. My address is Lolo, Montana. And I'm here to express to the Commission our support for the proposed Missouri Headwaters Conservation Area. This is a proposed project area that allows the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to use land and water conservation funds to purchase conservation easements from willing landowners on private lands only. And the purpose of these easements are to keep these working lands in operation and to protect the wildlife habitat that exists on those lands. There are many conservation and hunting and fishing organizations across the state that support this proposal, including Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, National Deer Association, National Wildlife Federation, North American Grouse Partnership, Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership, Trout Unlimited, Anaconda Sportsman's Club, Montana Wild Sheep Foundation, Big Sky Upland Bird Association, Skyline Sportsman, Jefferson Valley Sportsman, Deer Lodge County has submitted a letter of support, and the Ruby Valley Strategic Alliance has one forthcoming. We heard that there were some questions about mineral extraction, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service presented to this body last month. They can't be here today because they're in the middle of a series of 4 public meetings called scoping meetings, where they're going around the project area to the several counties and gathering public input about this proposed conservation area. I was at the Wisdom meeting last night. There's one tonight in Butte, one the next night in Alder, and one in, tonight's in Dillon, and the next night is in Alder, and then there's one scheduled for Butte, October 23rd. These are called scoping meetings where they gather input from the public to determine the future of this proposed project. About mineral extraction with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service conservation easements. I personally have authored 25 conservation easements in the land trust community, but I have not for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service conservation easements. There's subtle differences between them. So I got on the phone with David Allen, who's a realty specialist for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for lands in Montana. These were his responses that he wanted me to deliver on his behalf tonight. A U.S. Fish and Wildlife Conservation Area boundary itself has no impact on mineral extraction whatsoever. There are several conservation areas that have active mines within their boundaries right now in Montana, North Dakota, Idaho, and other western states. A conservation easement has no impact on mineral development on properties that have third-party mineral ownership. Federal hard rock minerals on split estates, meaning the private is on the surface and the feds own the minerals, those lands would remain subject to the 1872 General Mining Law, and mineral rights supersede surface rights. If the public wants conservation easement language for the proposed Missouri Headwaters Conservation Area to have mineral development as a permitted use, then those comments should be submitted during the current scoping period that is now open through the end of November. As a practical matter, during the appraisal process, when they value a conservation easement, there's an appraisal conducted. One of the elements of that appraisal is called a mineral remoteness test that is conducted on the subject property. If these properties have a high potential for mineral development, they score lower on the ranking system that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife serves to score their properties, and therefore lowers its chance of being funded. David said that the conservation easements that would be used in this proposed area have not been drafted yet. And that's what this scoping period is about, to gather input on what that draft conservation easement should look like. So if you have things you want to see in these conservation easements, such as mineral development as a permitted use, then please submit those comments to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service by November 27th. And I'm here to answer questions on conservation easements. I do not represent the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but I have experience with conservation easements myself and other entities. So if I can answer any questions, I'd be happy to do so.
So we can't ask questions during the public comment period.
Okay.
So
Thanks,
thank
sir.
you.
Brett Berry, 519 Galena. And I just wanted to say, if someone from Lolo is here to support a communication before this board, then it's not advantageous for Butte, period. If outside interests are that concerned with what we're doing, we should look at it very closely. I'm available for questions on that, too. All right, anything, let me see, Communication 467 with the vehicles and community enrichment. Community enrichment is a criminal organization that is purposely in harassing people that live here, citizens of Butte, the people whose grandfathers mined these hills and are now being pushed out by whatever we want to call a board or a department of this county. I still find it asinine that we have an entire agency dedicated to harassing our citizens. They should be helping these people stay in their homes rather than being the lead cause for eviction. Again, criminal is the only word that comes to mind. Words like enrichment, critical materials, headwater designations, communication transparency, and conservation, those are all, they're going to flood Butte. And if you don't know that, which I'm sure most of you do, it's coming, and they have every intention of flooding this place and getting away with it and not having to pay a single bit of reclamation on top of it. I'm sure they'll tie it to a natural disaster or something. So life is hard. It's harder when you're stupid. Thank you.
All right, thank you. No more public comment. We'll ask the clerk to read the one that was written, sent in to us today, please.
Commissioners, as you debate the need for transparency surrounding communication number 2023-436, I urge you to consider the attachment comment letter from the Montana Natural Resource Damage Program. NRDP has not been invited to the table as the design reached 95% complete. And aside from CTEC, the public has not been involved. Rather than make vague statements based on opinion of morality, please consider the amount of information missed when these agreements are made behind closed doors. Somehow EPA, DEQ, and BSB miss leaving waste in the floodplain, which is prohibited by the CD, along with a long list of items that could have been avoided with transparency. Grove Gulch has been in the design process since 2018, And after 15 years behind the curtain, the best people in the country missed a few things. Speaking of floodplains, during Q&A portions of the EPA meeting, August 28, I asked when the last time the floodplain in Butte was surveyed. Since it seems that my question will never be addressed, I took it upon myself to investigate. 1977. It seems to me the climate and weather patterns in Butte have changed drastically in the last few years, much less decades. It's perhaps as drastic as the opinions and the beliefs held by the members of CTEC who regularly speak in favor of ramrodding the process through. The same guys who come up to the podium every week with the same rhetoric about Metro Storm Drain and how we just need to get it done. But it's a sharp contrast from the opinions they held back in 2016 when they wrote poetic letters to the editor about the once flourishing stream and its abundance of aquatic life. It's worth taking a moment to consider what has changed that prompted the 180-degree turn in the position. I'm still waiting for the accessible PDF of the allocation agreement that on September 27, 2023, Eric Hassler assured me I would be receiving soon from the county attorney. It doesn't instill a lot of confidence in transparency or trustworthiness when public employees meet me with suspicion and question my intentions to potentially plagiarize in some capacity. It seems everything surrounding this consolidated government is shrouded in secrecy, and don't dare question the narrative. It doesn't inspire confidence when the public health officials who tell you to trust the science don't follow the science themselves, or at least good objective science. Vote for transparency in science tonight. Thank you for your time. Caitlin Belay, District 7.
Okay. Moving on, if there's no more public comment, I'm going to bypass the report of the chair since we have a long night. Section 1, bid openings, public hearings, and/or presentations. 1, communication number 2023-503, Matt Vincent, Montana Mining Association Director, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization for time on October 11th, 2023, Committee of the Whole meeting to discuss USFWS proposed Missouri Headwaters Conservation Area. Mr. Vincent, welcome back.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the council, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. And I would thank Mr. Laird for bringing some additional information from the service and on behalf of his own organization. What I hope tonight is that we can give some of the very real concerns that our association has on this. I mean, we have became aware of this a couple months before the public scoping period started. We had a number of conversations with some of the conservation partners and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service employees, and throughout those conversations amongst our own association, we'd also reached out to other Western state mining associations as well as the national mining associations. If you pool those resources, there is a large group of legal and policy minds who are very well steeped in public land management and certain issues. And so a lot of the information that I'm going to read to you tonight kind of draws upon some of those resources. So we'll go ahead and, what button do I press here? Oh, you got it. Okay. So just to you maybe refresh, I know you guys have had a presentation. Oh, it's not. Okay. All right. No problem. So this is a U.S. Fish and Wildlife designation, the proposed Missouri Headwaters Conservation Area. And it is, kind of in their own words and descriptions and, confirmed by what Mr. Laird said, it allows them to access land and water conservation funds to acquire willing private landowner conservation easements. They've assured us that this is an internal funding requirement. They can't spend or access those land and water conservation funds unless it is within a designated conservation area. This one is particularly vast. It includes, they say 5.7 million acres in their public scoping documents, but the calculations we've done show that it's actually closer to 5.8, as if that makes a huge difference. But within this area, Mr. Thompson kind of alluded to it, it's 65% of the area is publicly owned, or 3.77 million acres, and 35% of the proposed area is private ground. The public scoping is open through November 27th. I have an asterisk by that because when we first found out about this, it was going to be proposed to be a 30-day public comment period after myself having one conversation with Mr. Allen with the service, as well as Ben Gills, who I think was here maybe when he gave the presentation. They expanded it. They started the public scoping period early on September 20th and went to October 26th. Subsequent letter from Senator Daines and another letter from the Attorney General's office that I'm aware made its way to the service, asked for more time, between 30 and 90 days, and so they responded by adding that additional 30 days onto the public scoping period, which is only right, and I would even maybe advocate for more time depending on what information comes out of this. After that, they will come out with, according to their own scoping website, draft land protection plan in the spring of 2024, and then they will release the final plan for this conservation area in whatever form it ends up being in the fall of 2024. So go ahead and go. Oh, maybe go back one more. This one kind of shows all of the lands in the different colors, and the ones that are kind of eligible here are the light colored ones, but all of those green and purple areas and blue are already publicly owned lands, either through the federal government or the state of Montana. This includes over 500,000 acres of state of Montana managed land, either through FWP, DNRC, or the school land trust. So go ahead to the next one. So this is another result of some of the questions and that have been asked. This was added recently, and it shows more that, you know, this is about the private lands. And so those orange areas, or that roughly 35% of the total area, are the eligible lands. And I broke that out so you could read it. It's within the proposed boundary, which includes everything. Their Fish and Wildlife Service is proposing to acquire up to 250,000 acres of conservation easements from willing private landowners only, and that's fine. We'll get into that a little bit more. Our issue is not necessarily with the private land conservation easement. It's everything else in here. So you break that out real quickly. They're out of a 5.8, 5.7. It doesn't really change this number. The 250,000 acres that they're hoping to acquire represents 4.3% of that total area. And of the public lands that are in this new conservation area, there's already a ton of land that has permanent or long-standing conservation perspectives. You know, you got the Anaconda-Pintler Wilderness area in there. You've got the Red Rocks National Wildlife Refuge, numerous wilderness study areas. There are already a lot of existing conservation easements in there, plus other grounds that have protections, like the Mount Hagen Wildlife Management area would be an example that folks here are probably familiar with. So if you take it for what they say, and you do cut out the public lands, which I'll come back and discuss what our concerns are with this, and just focus on the 35% that are private lands, the 250,000 acres, if acquired, would mean that 12% of all private lands within this area are now under permanent conservation easement. And I put that although that number is likely much greater, it's kind of hard, that doesn't make a lot of math sense, but what I mean by that is right now, as of today, in Beaverhead County, almost 17% of their public land or private lands are already under some form of conservation easement. In Madison County, it's 25%. So you're going to be adding 250,000 acres on top of that. And while my focus here tonight is to talk about the concerns of the mining industry, you got to ask yourself the question as, you know, the governing body of a county, you know, Butte-Silver, I believe, is 60% publicly owned, which leaves you 40% private ground to generate tax revenue on, so you guys can balance your budget and provide the services and do the things that the community needs. In areas like Madison County, where they already got 25% of their private ground under conservation easements, they stay on the tax rolls, but they're limited in what additional future revenue can be generated from there, because it's all geared towards maintaining it as is existing agricultural uses. And so that's something that needs to be taken into consideration when you weigh how you want to come in on this. Next slide, please. I think this is relevant and something that we would like you to consider. You know, you're looking at a huge area that's being proposed here. The Lost Trail Conservation Area is the most recently created conservation area in Montana. It's up in northwest Montana in a really cool area. Not a lot of agriculture, mostly timber. And that area is a 120,000 acre area, which provides them authorization to acquire up to 100,000 of those 120,000 acres into private conservation easements, or roughly 83% of the land within that area is eligible for conservation easements, compared to 4%, less than 5% within what the proposed area is here. Why so big, and why all the public lands? It's concerning. And furthermore, the Lost Trail Conservation Area has a similar breakdown between public and private. We've got 65% of this proposed area that's public. It's a much higher percentage of private land that was within this Lost Trail Conservation Area. Next slide, please. So this is where we get into some of our concerns from a mining industry. This graphic that you have up here, it's a minerals assessment of generally this proposed conservation area. It doesn't include all of it, but it includes most of it. And what you will see is that those black dots are all areas of known mining activity, either past or current. What this does, and it's a lot. I mean, if you look at the map of the entirety of Montana, this probably represents 25–30% of the state of Montana's mineral resources that are out there and that have been mapped. What it doesn't include is, as Dr. Young stated, there's this new focus on rare earth elements and critical materials that have been identified as being vital to our economy, our ability to continue to advance technology, and our national security. The Bureau of Mines and Geology is not done and are in the process of going out and mapping those areas. So in some of the presentations that I have sat in from our state geologists, a lot of these areas are going to end up within this proposed area. And it does not also include private mineral mapping efforts. Mr. Laird mentioned on behalf, I believe, of Mr. Allen that there's remoteness studies done on the mineral potential of these areas. Again, it only includes the existing mapping that has been done by public sources, which is incomplete in and of itself, as we're still looking for these deposits. It also does not include private mineral mapping efforts, and we're aware of at least one of our members who is currently in some form of dispute with the federal government over the fact that they feel their mineral rights and their values have been basically negatively affected by 2 already established conservation areas, and they also have some mineral rights that are within this proposed area. And so it does have an effect on mineral rights and the value of them, how they're determined, and we'll get to the concerns on the ability to actually develop those, whether for exploration or operations. It doesn't include Montana Resources, luckily, as we rely on them for a lot of our tax revenue here, but it does include the existing Barrett's Minerals mine and their 2 pits that they have down there. It includes Magris Talc's Yellowstone mine in Madison County, as well as the Garnet USA operation. A couple of other smaller mines. If you remember back in 2013, the Butte Highlands joint venture mine up in the Highlands, it would be included in this area, as well as literally thousands and thousands of mining claims across this area. So now we get into some of these broader reaching concerns that we've identified. You got to start with looking what is the definition of a conservation area. You can pull this right up off of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's website. It's a conservation area is a type of national wildlife refuge. You won't see that mentioned anywhere in their scoping documents. Yes, I do believe them that they're looking at this as a internal funding mechanism, but the reality of the definition is that it becomes a type of national wildlife refuge. And they're reported as such once they're created, adding to the units that are managed within the National Wildlife Refuge. So you can start to see where our concerns might be beginning to rise. And so whereas, again, this isn't specifically about the 250,000 acres of private conservation easements or what the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's intent is on how they manage those conservation easements. It's how it affects other private landowners when they try to move forward with permitted activity, and it also affects other federal agencies and even state entities possibly. You look under the some secretarial orders in the Department of the Interior, it requires that the U.S. Forest Service and the BLM, the 2 largest public land agencies in our country, must consider Fish and Wildlife Service conservation priorities in their land management plans and decisions. Furthermore, there's the Federal Land Policy and Management Act that recently, as in this year, the BLM has changed those rules to elevate conservation as a land use above or equal to all of the other historic uses of our public lands, mining, logging, agriculture. How do you think that weighing might come when a permitted activity comes in within this area? And they're already forced or asked to look at conservation as an equal, if not higher, value land use, and it's within a conservation area. It doesn't give us much confidence that we're going to be able to do these things without some sort of impact. So I think I'll start rolling through now just an overview of our concerns on this. You can go to the next one. Seems to be the issue of the day, transparency here. This process has been anything but transparent. Mind you that Mr. Laird and his organization, as well as a number of other conservation organizations, they have been working behind closed doors with the federal government on this for 10 years, at the longest, sometimes I've heard 14 years, at least the last 18 months. Yet they are now asking the affected public, they wanted to give us 30 days. They extended it to 36 days, and now we get 60 days basically to weigh in on something that they've been working on for the last 10 years or more. It's just not the way these things should be. I'm grateful for the public scoping period, but what about the pre-planning phases that have been going on with limited input from select individuals and organizations and no knowledge from you guys or pretty much anybody else from the general public? When I did first find out about this, wasn't first when I first found out about it, but after I started to learn a little bit more and had some questions, I reached out to all of the members of our congressional delegation, starting with Senator Tester, who is a champion of conservation and public lands. Hadn't even heard of it. Neither had Senator Daines. Neither had Representative Rosendale or Representative Zinke. And when we started asking the folks in state government, starting with the governor and the other elected officials that make up the land board, not one of them was consulted in any way, shape, or form on this. So we have got to have better transparency on this, and there's a lot of answers that we need to some very real concerns and questions and some guarantees that this doesn't do what we're concerned that it is. I already touched on the fact that this area is far too expansive and includes far too much public land, but it's more to the priorities and the lack of focus. To say that 5.8 million acres has all the same priority is no priority at all. They list, I just threw the bullets up there on the things that are listed in the scoping period that are their stated priorities without focusing where they are in the area. I think the one that we do know about that, as an example of if you do want to provide some data and some focus on a real priority, let's talk about the Arctic grayling in the Big Hole River. I mean, let's start with maybe focusing a conservation area around the lands that affect the Big Hole River and the Arctic grayling. But all of these things, none of them are quantified, or they do not provide any supporting data for how or if they're even priorities. I think basically what this is at this point is, it seems to be a solution to a problem, and quite frankly, a problem that it doesn't exist. This is the Missouri Headwaters Conservation Area. We want to protect agricultural land and working lands from fragmentation. Why isn't the vast majority of the Madison River, where you got all sorts of development in Ennis and the Upper Madison, or any of the Gallatin, where it's as big of an issue as it is anywhere in America, not even included in this? It just doesn't add up. So, next slide. We touched on this already. Our public land management implications is by these other federal agencies, not specifically the Wildlife Service, or what we are concerned with as they weigh what the best end land use is for permitted activities and management of these areas. And it includes, our focus is mining, but it includes all of those things, including municipal growth and management on where we want to do economic development, where we want to manage our growth plans for the future growth that is coming to Montana. I mean, I appreciate we have to conserve some of these vital areas, but to just paint nearly 6 million acres with one color brush is not the way to do it. We think it'll have private land use implications as well, because when you have to receive a permit for a private project, you still have to go through all of these public agencies that will weigh these things one way or another. And the litigation piece is a very real deal right now. I mean, every time you have any sort of a natural resource development project, some group is looking to sue on this. Now they are going to be able to add one more reason why a permitted activity should not occur within this area. I just kind of highlighted some of this language directly from the scoping document. I mean, you see the agricultural lands in western Montana, they're being lost to pretty much everything. So what, I mean, is that what they're going to be trying to control on these conservation easements? And is that what's going to be weighed in the context of the entire area? And Mark already brought that one up. I think that, you know, these easements that are purchased with public dollars do not require public access. It's a concern of ours. Basically, it's just not enough information across the board in a very non-transparent, non-inclusive process that has led us to this scoping period that they would lead you to believe is the beginning of this process. That's just not true. I guess in closing, you know, we're and I myself, I'm not opposed to private property owners doing whatever they choose is the highest and best use of their property, and that includes conservation easements. It's a necessary tool, which I did forget to state something. One of the reasons for this is that they said private landowners may not have access to land trusts. Well, I would say by looking at those numbers in Beaverhead and Madison County, they're finding access to them somewhere because they've already locked up or acquired a lot of their land in these conservation easements. Now you have the prospect of spending public dollars to conserve more private ground, and there's no guarantee for the public to access that property. That's an issue. That's a concern. But back to the letting private landowners do what their right is to do what they choose to on their property is fine, as long as it doesn't infringe upon the rights of other property owners to do the same, and that includes us public landowners. We feel real strongly, as I said, that the scoping documents are inadequate of relevant information and supporting data, and they have not addressed the myriad of concerns that we have shared with the Fish and Wildlife Service. I heard some reference to some operating mines within these conservation areas. I'm not aware of any of our members that are operating within an existing conservation area, and I did reach out to our surrounding states on some other ones, and I think this might be more of a tale of the lack of transparency. The 4 mines that exist in one of these existing conservation areas in Idaho didn't even know that the conservation area was created. So at what point they might go to expand their operations, they might have very real consequences and find out what the effect of these conservation area designations are. Needs to be way more information shared, more public meetings. That's another thing that's changed. Mr. Laird referenced that there's now a meeting scheduled in Butte. That's a good thing, because up until them adding that meeting, they're only having meetings in 2 of the 5 affected counties that would be affected by this area. The concerns that we have are focused primarily on exploration and development, both of our existing operations and their ability to expand, as well as future exploration and development as we strive to find more domestic critical minerals. This kind of is at odds with the stated priority by the federal government on the one hand, acknowledging that we've got a real problem with our domestic supply chain of critical minerals. We rely on China and other countries that are not necessarily friendly to us as much as 95% in some cases, and that has been acknowledged that we need to shore up our own domestic supply chain for our economic sake and our security's sake. Yet we're broadly covering these huge areas that have vast mineral deposits within them and are going to have to wait and see how a conservation designation might affect our ability to do that. Not a good idea. Bottom line is there's just not enough information in our minds to justify this proposal. We think that the service needs to go back to the drawing board and investigate other options to achieve whatever the justified needs are and likewise justified focused areas. And I think until you guys get those guarantees and those questions, I would hold off on sending any sort of a letter of support. Happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Vincent. I will open it up to questions from the commissioners. Commissioner Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Vincent. This is very informative. I just have a question related to Dr. Young's comment, just because you could probably answer it. I don't want to. Because I couldn't really hear him. I'm interested in the number, again, of the critical minerals, or the critical materials. You kind of went through the numbers pretty quickly, so.
Yeah, the numbers are about 50 minerals and elements. I forget the number on the periodic table. You'd think I would know that, but 112 and 50 of them are critical.
Thank you.
And just so everybody knows, if you want to look at a piece of the pie and divide it into 8 pieces. So if you want to look for indium, gallium, and germanium, you have to mine zinc. If you want to mine selenium and tellurium, you better go after copper and probably gold. That doesn't mean that those critical elements are going to be there, but they're not going to be there if you go after something else.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Reardon.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson. That was a real interesting presentation, Matt, and when these gentlemen were here a couple weeks ago and all that, they also did a great presentation, but I sat and thought about it and all that, and they didn't really have a lot of answers to there wasn't a lot of questions, but after you think about it, and one of the questions that come up was basically how much are they paying these leases for these people by the acre. And another thing that they didn't really address with this easement is the fact, let's use Jed Clampett, that's a great one. He's a member of this easement deal and all that, and he's out hunting and shoots in the ground and all this oil comes bubbling up. What's this guy's option? He's granted this easement and all that, the conservation easement, and all of a sudden he's flooded with oil. So I have to agree. I know you personally, and a lot of people know me. I'm a hunter, I'm a fisherman. I get that part of it, but I think there's a lot of questions that Montana's a great place. When this gentleman was up there are a lot of support because everybody knows what we're up against. But still, this does not grant any public access with the taxpayers' money. And I find that a real interesting fact. The facting is that we're using tax dollars to basically shut us out if they want to. And I have to agree, this is my own personal opinion, I don't think we know enough about this to act on it right now. And I would like to see more facts about how much money is going to be spent, the facts about Jed Clampett, and basically what's going to go on here, because I know and you know and everybody in this room knows we have a great partner in this community with Montana Resources. It's conducted well and all that, and it's providing a lot of commodities, mineral-wise, to this country and to this nation. So it is very important. And I just thank you for enlightening my concept on it. Thank you.
Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson. I will stand by the fact that the best thing about public lands is that we all own them. And I think in any circumstance, if at any chance there is any question towards some type of ownership or anything that could go wrong with our public lands, like we are constantly facing, well, I guess not constantly facing, but facing a lot more with our current government. I think that we just need to be awfully wary, as Mr. Vincent pointed out. So, I would also just kind of echo Commissioner Reardon that before we issue anything, any letter of support or of no support at all, I would also like to make sure that we move forward by getting all of the facts from the other parties as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Makins.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson. And one more, thank you, Mr. Vincent, for the presentation, everybody that spoke on. But with Mr. Vincent, what would be your recommendation then with Butte-Silver, seeing that the sediment, I agree with both of everybody here and the information that with public land, but just could you give a recommendation at this time?
Yeah. Commissioner Makins,
If you're at
Mr.
liberty
Vincent.
to.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Makins, I think the one positive thing about this at this point is that they have extended the public scoping period. They did add another public meeting in Butte, although I would have advocated, it includes, like Mr. Thompson said, everything on the eastern side of the divide. So a more appropriate place to have this to make it easy for the affected citizens who may have questions on this would be Divide or Melrose. But I think, you have an opportunity to show up at that meeting and ask a lot of questions and get some comfort level with whatever assurances they can give you. I just think that you're somewhat limited in talking to just the service employees, because I'll take them at face value. I agree, or I trust them that maybe they think that this is only about the 250,000 acres of ground that they'll be entering into with willing private landowners, but we have got a whole lot of expertise in these areas that say it's going to go much further beyond that, and some of these questions should be being asked of the Department of Interior itself, the BLM, Department of Agriculture, and the U.S. Forest Service. Those would be some recommendations. I think asking about the public transparency, why are you guys just being asked about this 3 weeks ago, I believe was the first time it was brought to your attention, when they've been working on this for years?
Any other questions?
So as we're sitting here and
hold
Mr. Laird's in the audience right now, Mr. Laird, can you answer that question?
Sure. Which one?
And the latter of it, seeing that it was just brought to us 3 weeks ago?
The individuals, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service actually started this process a couple of years ago, but only in a very fundamental way. It's sort of like doing due diligence on a large project. You talk to local landowners. The reason this came about is that there was a demand in Beaverhead County particularly that couldn't be met by the land trusts that operate there. Conservation easements are expensive, and the personnel from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and other land trusts that work in the community couldn't meet the demand for the expenses that it took for the people who wanted to work with conservation easements in those counties. And so the Fish and Wildlife Service, because of Red Rocks and all that, they have a presence in the county. They were approached saying, is the conservation area a good tool for this area, because there's a high demand for conservation easements and we can't meet them. And during the Trump administration, they fully funded the Land and Water Conservation Funds, and one of those buckets of money goes to the Fish and Wildlife Service to purchase conservation easements. Up until that law passed, the Great American Outdoors Act, there was some money in the Land and Water Conservation Fund, but it wasn't fully funded. This law got it fully funded. Now there's more money in the pipeline. And the opinion in many parts of southwest Montana was that now maybe we can start to meet some of the demand for purchase conservation easements that we couldn't meet before. And this has been a transparent process. I've been doing it myself, and so has a bunch of other people in these counties, and particularly in Beaverhead, because that's the bulk of the conservation area. And there was at one time a stewardship committee assembled down there with landowners, county commissioners, conservation groups. It kind of folded up when the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service decided to stop looking at this area and look at other areas in the United States. There's already 4 conservation areas in Montana. There's one on the High Line, there's one on the East Front, there's one in the Blackfoot that's been there since 1997, and then the new one that was mentioned in Lost Trail. And this is the latest proposal. Most of these conservation areas never even meet their acreage goals. The one in the Blackfoot has been around since 1997, and it still hasn't. So these are willing landowners that can work with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, they can work with the Elk Foundation, they can work with the Montana Land Reliance, they can work with whoever they want. Now they have another tool in the toolbox that has some new funding that the other organizations can't get their hands on. In regard to the administrative boundary, that has been an issue we hear a lot about because it looks so big. There's a conservation area in North Dakota that's 29 million acres. The city of Bismarck's in the middle of it. So it's an administrative boundary. It's not a targeting lands boundary. The Fish and Wildlife Service, again, I'm not representing them, but they have a process, and they identify a landscape that has a need and the ability to meet that need. And so they draw an administrative boundary. In this case, it runs along the Continental Divide and along certain watersheds. And that's an area that they identified. So it's an administrative boundary, it's not a target area. The only lands that are available for this program are people who approach the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and want to work on them for a conservation easement. It may not even happen. There may be appraisal issues, there might be mineral issues, there might be funding issues, there might be other permitted uses that don't agree, that can't abide by the conservation easement. There's a host of reasons. And that's one reason why these acreage goals and these other conservation areas haven't even been met, and they've been around since the late 90s. So it's not this perfect, succinct, it's been called a land grab, which is totally inaccurate. This is an administrative boundary that identifies an area at which they have authority to work within. That's all it is. It might be changed. If you want the conservation area to change, submit public comment. This is scoping. It's the very beginning of a public process. Yes, there's been discussions had for this previously, but it hasn't been for 5 or 10 years, that's for sure. Maybe 18 months. These things go slow, and you don't want to approach the public with a half-baked proposal. It takes time to see if there's energy, to see if there's cooperation, to see if there's a need, to see if there's support from local communities. It's a long process. And now it came to some level of persistence, and now it's time to go out to the public with it because you have a package to present them that has some meat to it. So it's not this behind-the-scenes, closed-doors thing. It's not it at all.
Follow-up, Commissioner Mankins.
So when you talk about that, though, when you say that it's not closed, but when you talk about the scope and it's 4, and then there's one added that I didn't know about until you just said that there's one in Butte on the 23rd, but like communities like Melrose and Divide that were spoke of, and you speak of Beaverhead, why aren't those, like, aren't that public opinion mean anything to you, or did you just want them?
No, it
seeing
wasn't.
that
It
they're
wasn't
in
us. Yeah, it wasn't us, commissioners. It wasn't us to set those community meetings and dates. It was the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I don't know why they picked them. They usually have, I think that was mentioned earlier, they usually have a 30-day comment period, and maybe that's all the communities they thought they could get to in 30 days and do a good job of it. I don't know. But Danes did ask for an extended comment period, which was granted, and he did ask for another meeting, which was granted. I don't think they purposely leave out any communities. I think they can only do so many because their staff has to go to each one of them. And they're doing 3 in a row this week, and then they're going to skip a week and then do Butte. But I have no idea why they picked the towns and times, other than they're within the project area.
Okay. Commissioner Reardon.
Thank you, Chairman. Would you do the members of the council a favor when you find out more details on this meeting on the 23rd, a time and a place? Would you be?
I think they just put it on their website this morning. Back on? It's on their website. I think it came on this morning because they just added it because the request was received, and so I don't know how their PR people work, but they just got it posted on their website that it's going to be in Butte. I think it's October 23rd.
Once we figure that out, I'll send it to the commissioners.
And there's this kind of confusing thing about, again, the boundary and all the public land within it. This has nothing to do with those public lands. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service consults with the BLM and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on all their land use planning anyway. There's nothing unusual about having a conservation area in a planning area. It's, like I say, there's 4 other ones in Montana. So this distinction, just try not to blur the public lands with the private lands, just because they're within that administrative boundary. This is subject to private lands only who wish to work with the service on conservation easements. If they don't wish to, they're not going to call. Thank you.
Commissioner Thatcher.
Just a technical question, County Attorney Joyce. So, well, I guess anybody that probably knows the answer to this, because I sure don't, but if these guys have their public comment periods or their scope periods, and if most of the boundary line resides in Beaverhead County, I mean, what purpose, I guess, I mean, obviously we have property within these boundary lines too. What if we say, no, we don't want to do this? I mean, do we make that decision? We don't, right? So this is mostly just informative on both parties, correct?
Yeah, and I asked that same question at the previous presentation, and there's nothing for us to vote on. It would just be whether we chose to write a letter of support or not. Okay. If there's no more questions, thank you again for the great presentation. Very informative, and really appreciate you coming back to council to talk with us. All right, moving on to section 2, communications. 1, communication number 2023-436. Jim Fisher, Commissioner, District 6, requesting a resolution to be considered for expressing the policy of Butte-Silver regarding consent decree commitments, communications, and public transparency. We attached a clean version, a red line version. We also attached Chief Executive Gallagher's letter to the EPA that he sent to us on September 18th for reference. And so I hope everyone's had a chance to look at the changes to the resolution. And I would open it up to discussion or entertain a motion. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson. I've got some questions, I guess, with the county attorney. As you know, I'm fully in favor of this proposal. We heard a lot tonight from people that were in favor of this proposal. We heard a few that weren't in favor of this proposal. But this has been going on for a while, so this was referred to the committee of the whole a couple of times. So what I would like to do at this time, maybe with the advice of the county attorney, and I don't know if I have to do it in a motion or how I go about this, but I would like to, at this time, consider or make a motion if necessary to have the full council act as the judiciary committee and make a motion to have the full council act as judiciary, and I would follow up with a motion to concur with Communication 436. So if the county attorney could help me, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
County Attorney Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Fisher. So I believe the resolution would have to be introduced in a form that gives it an actual resolution number. That's required by your rules. So I don't think that it can be, I mean, if this was referred to the Judiciary Committee, or the full council acting as the Judiciary Committee, there wouldn't be an actual resolution number 2023-whatever to vote on. So I think you would have to make a motion that you request that this resolution be put in the proper format. And then if the full council wants to sit as the Judiciary Committee after it's introduced, you could have the resolution referred to the full council acting, the Judiciary Committee, the full council acting as the Judiciary Committee after it's introduced. So I think you would be requesting that I draft this resolution in the proper format first. I do have a couple questions about some of the language in the resolution. I think I'm just asking, like the whereas that says a court order confidentiality agreement does not apply to technical documents, discussions, and meetings concerning the implementation of the consent decree. I'm assuming that you mean the BIPSU consent decree, since that is what the title refers to, and the BIPSU is the only consent decree that Butte-Silver Bow is a potentially responsible party and a signator to. The stream-side tailings consists of more than just the BIPSU operable unit. It consists of several operable units, so the confidentiality order applies to different operable units, including the Milltown Reservoir, the Anaconda Smelter Site, and the Butte-Silver Bow, or the Silver Bow Creek Butte Area 1 site. So I just think some language needs to be clarified there. That also applies to number 3, where you say that the negotiations being conducted pursuant to the streamside tailing consent decree settlement. I don't think that's the proper language. If you mean the streamside tailings consent decree settlement framework is what the language was in the confidentiality order itself, so that it's clear that you're talking, because there isn't a streamside tailings consent decree. That doesn't exist. And let's see. I guess there can be additional conversation about number 1 in terms of what's considered independently reviewed science, and the fact that it isn't up to Butte-Silver Bow, I guess, to decide how the cleanup's going to happen, since we've already signed a consent decree and are bound contractually by those terms. So anyway, those are just some of the comments that I have that need to be fixed a little bit.
Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson. Thank you, County Attorney Joyce. There are some bullet points that can be worked out, as you know, and you stated the resolution has not been, put in format yet. So I guess what I'm asking is, rather than have a resolution that is put in format, all you got to do, you do all that work, and then we come back and, we don't pass. What I'm trying to do now is save a few steps here and just have a motion to have the full council act as the judiciary, and then refer this resolution to the county attorney to be drafted in a form that is acceptable to the council, and then we can work on them details. But as of right now, we're moving nowhere. So I guess at this time, am I allowed to make a motion to have the full council act as judiciary to move this resolution forward to the county attorney for a draft?
County Attorney Joyce.
Chairman Frederickson, Commissioner Fisher, that's what I'm trying to say, that I think you have to actually put it in a official format as a resolution first. And the reason that resolutions are referred to the judiciary is in case you want to make any changes to the original draft. So to refer it to the judiciary to prepare a draft is something I think that you could do tonight, is request that the resolution be, placed in the proper format. And if you want it to be the way it's written, then I think after it's introduced, then that's when changes can be made to the resolution based on maybe some of the comments I made or what other people are saying. But I think you have to have an actual resolution with the resolution number that's introduced to this full body for them to consider, and typically you refer them to the judiciary, and if at the time the actual resolution, not in a form that's just attached to a communication, is introduced, then the full council can act as the judiciary and make any amendments that they want to that initial document.
Yeah, Commissioner Fisher, and then, yeah. We got
Thank you, Chairman
few
Frederickson.
comments here.
Thank you, County Attorney Joyce. Okay, I'm going to cut through the chase here. I'm fear if we refer this to Judiciary Committee, it's going to get killed. I don't want that. I think we got a close vote coming up. Give me a recommendation, what I can do to get this resolution drafted by you and your people and get it to the council so the council can act as the full, as Judiciary Committee.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Fisher, first of all, the Judiciary Committee can't kill anything because anything that one of your subcommittees votes on has to go to the full council the following week. So if it failed in Judiciary, it would still go up to the full council the following week and all 12 members would vote on it. So the 6 people on the Judiciary cannot themselves kill anything. So what I'm saying to you is if you want this resolution that you've proposed, the red line resolution, to be introduced to the full council, that should be your motion. Then after it's introduced to the full council, it's either referred to the Judiciary Committee or to the full council acting as the Judiciary Committee, and that's when amendments can be made.
Okay. Thank you, County Attorney Joyce. Should I open it up to discussion, or do you? Okay, there looks like there's a lot here. So I believe Commissioner Anderson's first, then Commissioner O'Neill, then Commissioner Thatcher, and then Commissioner Sorge. We'll try to go in that order. Okay. Thank you very much. Commissioner Anderson.
Let me get the mic on and everything so I can share my wisdom. Thank you very much, Chairman, for the opportunity. Thank you very much, Commissioner, for bringing this to us. And thank you very much for everybody who has been up here and commented on this for quite a while. As I'm sure you're all aware, it's been mentioned a couple times that myself and Commissioner Fisher were the lone holdouts against signing the consent decree. I felt that there was not enough time, not enough expertise, and a lot of problems with that document, chief of which was the lack of transparency in preparing the document. And so the idea that we can clean up some of those things here, I think, is a great benefit, to have a lot of these meetings open to the public so the public can see exactly what is going on and learn exactly how this is going to impact the cleanup of their neighborhoods for themselves, their children, and their grandchildren. I heard somebody mention their grandchildren. I know that there has been a tremendous amount of work done by Butte-Silver employees in educating us and the public and covering a lot of these matters, and I believe that they did a good job for the most part. I think they did their best for the most part. Unfortunately, I don't think that we had the same money, time, and expertise involved in it as, say, a BP ARCO with their billions of dollars. We do not have that budget. The vice president of BP ARCO stood right where former chief executive Matt Vincent is, sat there, got up to the microphone and said that she had a team of employees and a year to go through these documents to get her up to speed. We were given less than 2 months to get up to speed without a team of high-priced lawyers who specialize in this kind of litigation and processes. So there's a lot of issues that have been. There was some things wrong, I believe, that should have been cleaned up in the original letter. And to the best of my knowledge, those things have been cleaned up. I think this is a good starting point. I think the best thing is to do exactly what County Attorney Joyce has recommended to us moving forward, moving forward, we should be amending and looking at a hard copy of this ordinance that has actually been put before us. That is the best way to clean it up further. The county attorney and her staff has done a great job with these matters in the past, and I believe they will continue to do so. They can fix a lot of this language and make sure that some of the mistakes that the people who have drafted this in the specific language and legalese, which I don't think any of us have as well a grasp on as the county attorney and her staff. So the best thing to do moving forward would be to move this to the Judiciary Committee and have the Judiciary Committee look through it. And in order to do that, we must have the county attorney's office present us a document that we can go through and look at. The only real question we have before us tonight is, do we want to have the county attorney's office draft a resolution and send it to this body, and then next week or in 3 weeks, when that is done, we can move it forward to judiciary, we can discuss it then, we can kill it then, but what we should do, the only responsible thing to do, is to move this forward and see exactly how it is to move this forward today and get the language cleaned up. It doesn't do us a darn bit of good to argue this point any further, that this shouldn't be in it, or this shouldn't be in it, or this shouldn't be in it. It's not a legal document. Right now, there's absolutely nothing in it. If judiciary kills it, which is a concern of mine also, then we can resurrect it the following week. If they vote to deny it, it doesn't kill it. We just have to resurrect it the following week. And we can continue to do that, and we can force a vote on it at that time if there's enough people. And I really hope that everybody will look at this and remedy the mistake that was made years ago in signing the consent decree and the curtain, with the curtain so we cannot see and view and understand, for the citizens of the Silver Bow County cannot see, view, and understand what was going on. They never had the negotiations in secret with the gag order in Missoula. They never had it in Anaconda. They never had it in other communities. I don't know why they did it to our community. I feel it was very wrong. I think it was a big oversight. And I think it's something that we should have never allowed to happen. We do have an opportunity, a very small one, and one that really doesn't hold that much waste, or not waste, excuse me, wrong word, that much influence. But what it does do is it shows that we're pushing back against the wrong that was put upon us for the last 20 years, why the consent decree and all of this cleanup should have been taking place and getting done. Instead, numerous people in our community have been living in piles of toxicity. People in our community have been dying of disease, of cancer, of MS. The babies have been born in this community with higher levels of lead and other things. They're starting off their life behind because of the lack of the cleanup in our community. We need to put a stop to people dragging their feet on this. We need to push this forward. We need to hold the responsible parties responsible. I think this does a good job of doing that. So at this time, I'm very happy to make a motion to put communication 2023-436 and have the communication letter be drafted in the form of a resolution and brought forward to this body as soon as possible. Thank you. You'd want to second that.
Well, I think the motion dies for lack of a second. Okay, are you? Okay. Okay, clarification. Is there a clarification on the motion, please? Yeah. Yeah.
You'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there anything on the question? Okay, we'll go Commissioner Shea.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, if I'm understanding the motion correctly, forgive me, I'm not an expert on our procedures, but it is to ask the county attorney's office to draft a resolution and refer it to the full council, I assume sitting as judiciary?
To full council. Council cannot sit as judiciary. Judiciary. The rules state that for the council to sit as judiciary, what would have to happen is that the Judiciary Committee would push that ordinance, would make a recommendation in judiciary to move that item to the council as a whole, sitting as judiciary. And then what happens at that point, when that communication comes before the floor, the chairman of the judiciary would take control of the meeting, sitting where our esteemed chairman is, and would run the meeting at that time. The main purpose of doing this is, and it can be done in any of the committee meetings, the purpose behind this is that there is a lot of time when there is a contentious issue such as this, and where 30 minutes really isn't, like today's judiciary meeting, we covered 2 items in 23 minutes, and we still had 5 that we had to rush through rather quickly. So what it does is it gives the council commissioners, the entire body, and not just the 6 people sitting in the committee, an opportunity to discuss these matters and give it the full attention that it deserves. If I could make a motion to have the body sit as the Judiciary Committee right now, I would do that. But in order to do that, we have to have a resolution. Right now, we don't have a resolution. What we have is a blueprint that a group of concerned citizens and one of our commissioners has brought forward to the table. So what has to happen at this point moving forward, the first order of business is to take that letter, and I would amend my motion to using the clean copy. To use that clean copy of this letter that's been reworked a couple times, use that as a blueprint for a resolution. The county attorney's office can use that as a blueprint, make any corrections to the language that they deem fit. They would submit it to this body in the form of a communication moving forward, hopefully next week's meeting, if not in 2 weeks, 3 weeks' time. At that point, it goes on the agenda as referred to judiciary, or the chairman could make a recommendation to move it to the committee at whole, and then we could do what we want to. In the consent agenda, normally it would be go to like item number 4 items referred to judiciary. At that time, judiciary takes charge of it, and we'll have a discussion there, at which time hopefully it would be moved to the committee of the whole sitting as judiciary.
I think County Attorney Joyce would like to clear
you,
some, but thank you, Commissioner Anderson. That was good.
I just wanted, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Anderson, I just wanted to note that anything that's done tonight as the committee of the whole isn't formally approved until next week. So I won't be able to introduce the resolution next week because you won't formally adopt what you vote on tonight until next week. So it'll have to be 3 weeks.
Okay. All right. There's a lot of questions on there's a lot of discussion still needs to be had. So Commissioner O'Neill's next.
Thank you, Chairman Ferguson, and thank you, commissioners, for all the, the hard work we're trying to put through on this. I hope, it'd be embarrassing, in my opinion, if we try to push this through tonight and vote on it. There's already confusions. County attorney already stated that already one part of it, whatever one it was, I can't remember. But, it can't, we'd be crazy. I think we'd look like fools if we try to vote on this tonight, okay? My opinion.
Yeah,
Okay?
we're not, we can't vote on it tonight, just to clarify.
That's just what I'm speaking.
Okay.
Let me
Go ahead.
speak. Everybody else, Bill got like a half hour. I only want 5, okay? The other thing I want to talk about is, so on number 6, all elected officials and employees of Butte-Silver Bow are reminded that the chief function of the local government at all times is to serve the best interests of Butte-Silver Bow. Well, you guys all ran. Come on, take that off. If any one of you here don't have that best interest, come on, you guys. We have that. And if anybody, I don't care what the public thinks or whatever any of you guys think, we have that. Trust me, one of the reasons I'm on this commission is because I'm a Butte rat and I love this place. My whole goal and heart is to do what's best for our community. I mean, come on, that's a no-brainer. So just chalk that off, okay, in my opinion. We talk about transparency. That's what we're trying to get here. We have the power to have our employees of Butte-Silver Bow come to us and get all the information. We can have ARCO come to the meetings and give us information. I hate to tell you this, but we already signed the consent decree. It's already signed. We at the time we didn't. We maybe should have. Whatever mistakes we did make, well, we made them, and I voted for it. I think at that time it was in our best interest to move forward with it. We can't change that. Okay. Again, I could go on all night, but. This, and for one, too, I want to, for the record, this is a resolution, not an ordinance, okay, and I think this is, I think there's a better way, to go about this. I don't have the idea yet, but it's actually sparked some great attention. Commissioner Fisher, I commend your efforts and what you're trying to do. It's the right thing. Yeah, thank you for letting me speak. I'll talk to.
I think next was Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson. I think that since this was introduced, I've, had a lot of conflicting views. Commissioner Anderson, I realize that this is an illegal document, and what we do tonight, it all has to go to be voted upon at another time. But I guess if we're all here talking about it, I don't see why we wouldn't continue the conversation a little bit further. So I guess my concerns solely on the red line here, I kind of echoed some of, actually I had questions that county attorney had and cleared those up. But with all meetings Butte-Silver Bow houses principals should be posted as to date, time, number 3. If we don't schedule the meeting, I'm all for transparency, but if we are not the people hosting the meetings, how are we to dictate? If EPA schedules a meeting, and this is strictly a question, I'm genuinely curious. If EPA schedules a meeting or BP schedules a meeting and invites Butte-Silver Bow as an invited party, who are we to dictate if it's open to the public or not. Genuine question.
Is that directed to me? I mean, I think that the purpose of 3 in posting whether the meeting was confidential is just to ensure the public that a meeting happened. Because right now we don't know if there was a meeting last week. I mean, maybe there was a meeting today. I don't know. The EPA was in town. Maybe there's been 10 meetings. Maybe there's been 100 meetings. And so I think that the point of that red line was just to let the public know how many meetings are actually happening. If there's not meetings happening, why is that? Why isn't there any progress? So I don't know if I tried answering your question to the best I can. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, pretty well. I guess it's still a bit confusing if we're going to put that into a legal document. I still question how we would have the authority to say that. I mean, I get having the meetings posted, but again, that's on EPA to post that. If any meeting is hosted by Butte-Silver Bow, I would damn well hope that it would be open to the public, because that is our duty. So that point. Second point I have, oh shoot, I just lost my train of thought. Second point that I was going to ask was, and maybe, I don't know, I don't think Mr. Ringsack or anybody is still here. Oh, Mick, you are. As a broad question, and I don't know if this can happen, I wasn't around for the consent decree. I did not read it, sure, shit, stuff, but I did not read it. But if we continue forth with this resolution, is anyone concerned that at some point we could lose our voice at the table? Like the EPA and ARCO and them could have these conversations with themselves and not include Butte-Silver Bow, and then if Butte-Silver Bow isn't included, won't we basically be at a stalemate and not a damn thing will get done? If anybody could answer that.
As I interpreted in the red line, when we went through it and spoke with the county attorney, we took some of that language out specifically for that reason. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so it's fine. That's fine with me. But I just think that this has been, a very positive, engaging conversation. But I think that the whole dynamic around it is somewhat negative. And I think that if we continue forth with this piss poor taste in our mouth, we might honestly mess this up. And if that's not a concern of anybody else's, tell me I'm crazy. But that is a genuine concern that I hold. And if we continue to push this down the road, yes, we need to do it in the right way, and things need to be done. But if we continue to push this down the road, we'll never see any of this done. And honestly, if that's not a genuine concern of anybody else, tell me to shut my mouth. But that's where I'm at. So thank you.
I'm sorry, I gotta let others speak, but we'll hold your thought. Commissioner Sorich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'm not quite sure what we're trying to do with this resolution. There has been a lot of good conversation. There's been a lot of good pieces. We're here and let's get the cleanup done. Let's do it. We got to get her done. We've been waiting too long. Okay, now if we drag our feet any longer, if we try to do some of this, we try to open. What are we going to try to do? Are we going to try to open up the consent decree again? Is that what those others want? We can't do it. But that's what we're hearing from some of these people. So what are we trying to achieve here? To protect the community. I think we're already doing that. I think we've done some of that. Number 2, protect the community. Use of urban robes shall be at the last resort. I think that's already been done. I know we're looking at it. I know it's being tried to be followed. I know some of this has already been done. Consent decree shall be driven by independently reviewed science. Who's going to review it? By who? Who's going to hire the independent? I don't have that expertise. I don't think anybody sitting at this table has that kind of expertise to hire to know who would be the best independent scientists to be reviewed. Number 6, I think it's already been hit on. Okay, no employer Butte-Silver Bow shall participate in any effort to discredit, harass, or humiliate a scientific, legal, or public policy. Who's going to enforce it? Who's going to be the person to say, that person is really harassing that scientist? How do we know? How do we know that they are being harassed? Is it going to be he said, she said type of deal? You know, I think this thing's still full of holes. I'm not quite sure what, I think we need to get it done. I think we need to keep moving forward. I think there's a lot, but I'm just not quite sure that what we're trying to achieve here. I can't really support this right now. I'm just not convinced it's number one thing I do want to say, I also feel when I have people coming in, they threaten us. When they threaten about, get it done, do your job, you're not doing your job right. We got a lot of hours in this. I know a lot of us have got a lot of time. We're not here because of, we're here because we want to do the right thing for the community. It's not, so I get, that kind of just tips me over when I get those threats. But anyways, that's where I'm at.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Swarich. I think it was Commissioner Callahan and then Commissioner Reardon.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson. First of all, when we all took this office, we swore to an oath to do what's the best for our community. So who's challenging that? Second of all, you guys came with this communication 2 months ago. And Jim, you're one of the first ones to say, let's keep kicking this thing down the road, let's get it taken care of. 2 weeks ago, you said, let's go, give us 2 more weeks so we can do some red line, let's clean this letter up so we can come back to the council and get this thing done. Now you're turning around and asking the county attorney's office to do it for you. If you remember correctly, when you first brought this letter, those people got up and they were offended by your letter. The people in our Superfund district were offended by your letter. So now you're going to ask them to clean the mess up for you? I think it's time for you guys to sit down, get your letter figured out, do what you want to do. Quit asking. These people are in fear that you're going to do some real harm to their jobs, on how they do their jobs. And until you get this thing figured out, why are we sitting here arguing about it? It's time somebody figures out what you want, bring it to the council, we can vote on it. We got to do what's best for our citizens. We all agreed to that when we swore into these jobs. And what are we doing? I mean, how long you know? This group from the DEQ, this is the 5th or 6th time they've been here to help us get through this thing. Ms. Steinmetz and her group, this is in 2 months. What are we doing? And then we sit there and badmouth these people and say, they're not treating us right. They're not doing the right thing for us. How much more can you ask of these people? They've been here every week for about a month and a half. What are you doing? Make your mind up and get it done.
Commissioner Reardon and then Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Chairman Frederickson. I agree that we're all here to protect and represent the people of Butte. And I believe that this resolution is what that is all about. If anybody is happy with the work that they've seen completed over 20 years in this contaminated corridor, I have a great argument to sit and argue with them. I see the whispers, I see the head shakes and all that, but these are what the citizens of Butte see, and they're very frustrated and all that. What we're trying to do is bring this for the people of Butte in front of all the people in Butte to let them know that we're doing our job. Here we are sitting in the middle of this arguing in between each other when we did take the pledge. Commissioner Fisher, Commissioner I participated in it. And to tell you the truth, I'm getting quite frustrated with it also because we have the support of the people, I believe. And like I said, there again, I bet if we took a poll on Facebook or something, I'm not one of those guys and all that stuff that are happy with the work that's been done over this corridor in 20 years, I would be very surprised that it would go the other way. So I agree that we have to do something and we have to do it soon. It's been a lot of hard work, but I'll tell you, there have been some things that have happened since the rumor of this resolution has come out. Basically, the EPA was in Butte today, and they met with commissioners that could make it, and that was probably would have never happened without this resolution. They were asking what they needed to do to make this thing better, to make the people of Butte happier with the way these things are going. I don't believe that would have happened without this resolution being introduced. So I think that we can't argue between each other, because I don't see how anybody sitting around this table should have any question, once we get this resolution cleaned up, about where we're going with this. We're going forward and representing the people of Butte like we should. I agree that we have been lollygagging, but these things take work, because basically this is like a hen house tonight, arguing back and forth. I like the motion that's been made. Let's move on, and then when it comes to the floor, it's a vote. But I know the way that I'm going to vote, because I don't think there's a citizen in Butte that's happy with the progress that's been made over the last 20 years. I wish they were like this cleanup was being conducted like the mine at Montana Resources was running. They get right after it and they get some things done. Thank you very much.
Okay, Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I will do my best to make this quick, and I'll even throw on a little compromise if I go over my 3 minutes. Just to address some of the concerns, the consent decree has been signed. This has no real posing impact on it. It won't allow them to take us away from the table. It might upset a few people, it might piss off a few people, but we'll be settled fine with it. As far as my side, Commissioner Fisher, kicking the can and wanting the county attorney to do our job now, actually that's her job. We submit communications with what we'd like to see be put in form of a resolution and an ordinance. They draft resolutions and ordinance and give it to us, then we make changes to it. Like I said before, this isn't a legal document. The only question on this vote is that do we want to move this forward in the most expedited manner possibly? If you want to move it forward, vote yes on my motion. If you want to kill this and end this debate and everything else, vote no on my motion. What I want to do is to continue this conversation, not as part of a communication, but as part of a document that we have control over and we can modify. There's no point in arguing this until it's perfect, when we can submit a resolution and modify that and vote on that. We're not going to vote on this. This will never be law until it's codified. So with that said, if we want to move forward with this, the best, fastest, easiest way is to vote yes right now in another minute and move this forward, and we can continue this debate in 3 weeks. It'll give us a whole 2 weeks without worrying about this, and we can take up the debate in a couple of weeks in Judiciary Committee or as the body sitting as a whole. With that said, I would make a motion for the call of the vote.
We don't need a motion to call. Oh, you do? There's been a motion to call for the vote. Second. No more discussion, right?
No more discussion.
Yeah. County Attorney oh, you want to talk? Okay. County Attorney Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to clarify whether the council is requesting the county attorney's office to introduce the resolution as proposed now, or whether you're asking us to redline this red line, because as indicated, there are a few issues in it, so I'm just asking what format you want. Do you want it introduced the way that it's presented tonight, or do you want our office to redline what's already been redlined and introduce what we
Yeah.
believe
A
should be
clarification
changed?
on your motion, Commissioner Anderson.
A clarification on the motion what I would appreciate is for your office to draft a resolution using the red line copy of this and amending it further with the correct language that you mentioned earlier in the meetings, earlier in this meeting when you were communicating with Mr. Fisher. There were some things that were still wrong that you corrected at that time, so if you would correct those in the, so I guess a correction of the corrected red line would be what I wanted.
Okay. Yeah, is there a question on the motion? We called for the vote, so we can't discuss it any further.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
I know that in the past, like we've, not to say that to kick it down the can any longer, but can't we put this in the suspense file for some time to take care of this, so this doesn't have to keep on coming up and having people come in every 2 or 3 weeks until this is completely kind of where some people want this, so then we can bring it without any red lines?
There won't be any red lines when it's reintroduced.
Yeah, that is an option, to put it in the suspense file.
I know
Not
that
anymore.
Commissioner Fisher, this is something that you've taught me in the past that we've done and brought.
Yes, Commissioner Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The whole point of keeping it on the agenda is to continue to work on it. I know what happens when things go into the suspense file. Sometimes they get forgotten about. I think we have a couple that are still hanging out in there. I think this is going to be a substitute motion to refer this and request the county attorney's office to draft a resolution with proposed red lines and introduce it to the council for approval.
So we have a substitute motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is that
Is it the same?
Yeah.
Just less words? Okay.
All right.
Excellent.
That was the original motion, so we're going to keep Commissioner Anderson's motion. There's been a call for the vote. No more discussion. Yeah, we will clarify the motion. The motion is to have the county attorney's office draft the communication, letter in the communication, as a resolution into the resolution format with the red line copy and introduce language that, or not introduce, sorry, add red line to language to what, to their recommendation. Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah, okay.
Oh, what do you need?
Yes.
Oh, that's not today's. Sorry. Here it is. Sorry.
Clarify the motion, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Fisher, I believe the motion is to request the county attorney's office prepare a resolution with any proposed red lines the county attorney's office believes is appropriate and introduce it to the full council.
Yes, thank you. There's already been a motion and a second. There's been a call for the vote. Commissioners, please vote. Clerk, will you record the vote?
8 yea, 4 nay.
8 yea, 4 nay, motion passes. Yes. Okay. I love rules and procedure, but that was a tough one. All right, moving on to communications number 2023-477. Angie Mullican, Public Works Budget and Grants Manager, requesting. Hey. Communication number 2023-477. Angie Mullican, Public Works Budget and Grants Manager, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence to schedule a bid opening for October 18th, 2023 for the landscape restoration of the Basin Creek watershed. This project is a grant funded by the Department of Natural Resources and Conservation to address dead and dying trees within the watershed. We will hold that for the bid opening next week. 3, communication number 2023-478, Angie Mullican, Public Works Budget and Grants Manager, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence to schedule a bid opening for October 18th, 2023 for the Molten Water Treatment Plant Filtration Replacement Project. We will hold that for the bid opening next week. 4, communication number 2023-480, Bill Melvin, Butte Civic Center Manager, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence to schedule a bid opening for October 4th, 2023, regular meeting agenda for a bid opening for the replacement bleachers at the Butte Civic Center. We held that bid opening last week. Commissioner Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I would make a motion to place communication number 2023-480 on file.
We have a motion and a second. Is there anything on the question? Would commissioners please vote? Clerk, will you record the vote?
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. 5, communication number 2023-489, Zach Osborne, BSB Fire Chief, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence to hold a public hearing for October 18th, 2023 for sole sourcing the 3 remaining bays exhaust removal system at Fire Station 1 and 2 through Air Pro Inc. We will hold that for the public hearing next week. 6, communication number 2023-498, Karen Malachny, BSB Health Officer, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence to hold a public hearing on October 18th, 2023 for the purpose of amending fiscal year 2023-2024 budget to allow expenditures of unanticipated revenue for the Health Department resulting from receiving a contract for Parents as Teachers program. We'll hold that for next week. 7, communication number 2023-503, Matt Vincent, Montana Mining Association Director, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization for time on the October 11th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting to discuss the USFWS proposed Missouri Headwaters Conservation Area. Commissioner Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would make a motion to place communication number 2023-503 on file.
We have a motion and a second. Is there anything on the question? Would commissioners please vote? Clerk, will you record the vote?
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. I will now ask for any public comment on matters not on the agenda. Seeing none, I will ask for a motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Opposed?